Do Americans actually think they are in the land of the free? As another ignorant European, I think those that praise the American freedom have a different ideal of freedom than most of us Europeans. For them, freedom means that no one tells them what to do. Except for those things that they agree with anyway or that don't affect normal daily life. While for us, freedom is more the feeling of safety from guidelines, rules and support within the society. Therefore, while we consider it freedom to not have to worry about health costs, they would feel unfree if they were forced to have an insurance. We feel free knowing that there are no guns around us, while they feel free being able to have guns. It's different priorities. And of course there are Europeans who would prefer the American way and Americans who would like it the way we have it here. I am not saying that everyone has the same ideas. The real question is, what does it mean to be free? Depends on who you ask. We are pretty split on this opinion. We are pretty split on most things right now. Personally, I think we are about the same as any other developed nation. Maybe a little less in a few areas and a little more in other areas. Out of curiosity, what freedoms do you think are restricted that otherwise wouldn't be anywhere else? Some Americans strongly believe this. Most of us know our freedom is actually pretty compromised. However, the education system over here romanticizes America so much, while downplaying other countries, making them seem a lot worse than they actually are. In school, I didn't learn much about other countries other than where they were located on a map. Long story short, Americans are ignorant. They think we're the best functioning country in the world but haven't actually done any research. Freedom of speech is pretty much an absolute here. So there's that at least also. The Second Amendment. I wish we had more freedoms though. It boggles me that a lot of my fellow Americans preach about freedom, but then want to lock up non-violent drug offenders, for example. Pretty much should be able to do whatever you want as long as you aren't directly harming others or infringing on their freedoms. In many ways, the US does have more freedoms than many parts of Europe. In many of those same ways, parts of third world countries, like Afghanistan, have way more freedoms than any Western country. Most people don't want that level of freedom, and agree laws and government are needed. After stating that, I assume we are talking about the freedoms Western nations care about with the understanding of those restrictions. Do Americans think we are freer than Europe? Generally no. If they are going to have a logical discussion, and it depends on the exact freedom you are talking about. The US has freer gun laws than most of Europe, and generally freer freedom of speech laws. We disagree on the level of strictness on them, and Europe has settled on what they consider reasonable restrictions for those rights, while the US disagrees. It depends. Some people think being able to own a gun is freedom. Some people think not dying from preventable illness due to unaffordable health care is freedom. Could be worse. Since I only know German laws, offending people in Germany is illegal. The USA is not. Weed is illegal as Germany. Some states it is not. Abortions are extremely restrictive and illegal after 12 weeks in Germany. Some states catching up there. USA has more liberties than Germany when it comes to guns or a pepper spray. More religious freedoms, while some German states have banned hijabs. In Germany, the state can reject a name you give your child if it is too odd, and it is extremely difficult to change your name, and you can't have double last names. While the US, you can name your kid F-15 fighter jet. So I don't know in what way you think the US is less free than most European countries. As if any meaningful conversation about politics or the US can happen on Reddit. As someone who has lived in multiple countries, yes, the US is more free than most. Please support your questions. What freedoms do Europeans have which Americans do not? Yes. People do believe that we are free. Of course. Most of us do not believe we are free to do anything we want at any time. Stated differently, most of us believe that we need to follow the law. Just because we have to follow the law doesn't mean we aren't free. Let's say freer. Believe me, even when it's shitty, we got it good. I'm free. Life is good. I'm sure your country is fine too. I'm an American. Living in Europe. Yes. Yes, they do. Like someone else said, Americans have a different perception of what freedom means. We tend to have the idea that freedom is personal freedom. The freedom to say, do and act however we want when we want. This is in some ways coded into our Constitution. Specifically the First and Second Amendments. Freedom of speech. Freedom to own a gun. For whatever reason, the loudest and craziest people you see are more of that libertarian, I take care of me and my own. Fuck off type, which tend to view freedom as exactly like I said. I can do anything that I want. Whenever I want. So long as I get mine. After living in Germany for 5 almost 3 years. The kind of freedom I enjoy here is completely different. Freedom of movement. Living in the US almost requires a car. And I haven't actually needed one even though I have one here in Germany. Freedom to work without fear of getting fired on the spot. At-will employment is pretty much standard in the States. Freedom of healthcare. Not having to worry about what happens when I get sick is so damn freeing. Freedom to enjoy my time. I get 24 days mandatory vacation days per year. Sick leave does not count against this. The US does not guarantee either of those. Something I think a lot of Americans forget is that we don't have any of these freedoms. We tend to live in constant fear and anxiety of losing our jobs suddenly. Of getting sick and having massive hospital bills despite paying out the ass for health insurance. Of our normal mode of transportation breaking down and not having an alternative. Of having to work till we die and only sometimes getting time off, and even then you're lucky if you get 2 weeks at a time. So conclusions. The freedom people in the States want is the freedom for the government to leave me the fuck alone, and the freedom people from Europe, at least Germany, want is the freedom to just live. Most Americans understand that we have freedoms that a lot of other countries don't, but we lack a lot of freedom that most countries have that make them better off. It's the height of hubris for Americans these days. Especially after Texas put their abortion bans to walk the other day. To think that this is the land of the free when people would rather die than have to pay for cancer. Or COVID treatments or some other ailments. Or they say nobody wants to work anymore when the only people hiring are paying the state's minimum wage or less, and nobody wants to tip their waitress anymore or something. We have at-will employee status which can be taken away just because somebody feels like it, and people don't want to work for those places anymore and then get made fun of for not wanting to work there, and then also get made fun of for working there like fast food. America is kind of stupid right now. Straight up dumb. In what way are they at the bottom of the list? Below China, where you can't even speak against the government? I don't think so. It's more of the product of the times. A good portion of European history is about being ruled by a monarch, which a good portion didn't actually do much for their peasantry. Thus, when compared, America was freer than Europe and such.
If you enjoyed this video, Please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.